Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're chatting with Kevin Gilbank, co-founder and executive leader at TERIC, where he guides the team in delivering innovative projects and driving the organization forward. Kevin's leadership style focuses on empowering people to excel, balancing present-day projects with future opportunities. A professional engineer, Kevin's broad experience across operations, construction, and projects has shaped his ability to lead high-performance teams. So first of all, Kevin, welcome to the show. And do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thank you for having me on. So as you mentioned, I'm an engineer by training. I've spent the majority of my career in energy. So started out in Alberta working on hydrocarbon-based projects and operations, worked across a wide spectrum of that industry, everything from unconventional gas, unconventional oil sands, great experiences, really built the foundation, I think, for me. In the last number of years, have switched into being very focused in the electrical generation industry. So probably where it gets most interesting is in the last 6 years, TERIC Power has become what we would consider a market leader in Alberta on energy storage projects. So we really specialize now in helping the grid with resiliency, reliability, keeping prices low for consumers. And we've built a number of projects, and happy to dive into that in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really exciting area, actually, is the energy storage, because I think one thing that we're getting better at as society is renewable energy and solar panels and wind and whatnot. But the problem is that the sun turns off at night. So and quite often we don't have the sun or the wind in those peak consumption hours as well, right? So I will get you to dive into that in a little bit here, because I'm really fascinated personally in that area too. But so what's your background? So you said you're an engineer by trade, but let's go a little bit further back. What made you want to go down that route, and what was that journey like?
So I grew up on a farm, small farm in Ontario, and I think that formed a lot of who I am. Enjoyed tinkering, building, wrecking, and I got to the end of high school, and I don't think I had a clear vision of what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be. Like a lot of kids, interested in a wide number of things, and elected to go into mechanical engineering because I thought, great way to keep doors open and great way to secure a job in any number of industries. Didn't have mentors or peers that family friends that had gone into engineering, but felt that was probably a right path for me. So I speaking to a little bit of unsurety, I actually went to college first. I did a 3-year engineering technologist diploma, and I would probably still say that was the right decision. I found that probably the most challenging in my education, and also really enjoyed it. So exiting that 3-year diploma, I went and worked in the automotive industry, and I worked for the Magna, the largest at the time, and I think still true today, manufacturer of parts for the auto industry. And I worked in the interiors department. We were building seating systems and gear shifters. Found it interesting, but quickly realized that I was going to be limited with college technologist diploma only. So
Right.
Went back to school, went international because I had an interest in traveling, went to the United Kingdom, upgraded to a full degree, and yeah, kind of got bit by the education bug, enjoyed academics, and returned to Canada and ended up doing mechanical engineering postgraduate. So I graduated with a master's degree in mechanical engineering, and then thought at that time, okay, that's probably enough. That's probably enough debt. That's probably enough. I need to get a real job, and at that time, then entered the workforce full time, and ended up in Alberta after that.
Awesome. Just a question on the England. Why England is, and I asked that because your last name would be like a UK based last name, I believe.
Yeah, a number of reasons. Um, didn't have any strong emotional ties to the country. Knew that getting a degree there and bringing it back into Canada would be much easier. Think I knew I always wanted to return home. Thought, yeah, if I'm going to go away and upgrade to a degree, I better at least not be struggling with the language and things like that. And they offered and had a history of people having done this before. So
Yeah, right. Okay. So tell me how you get into the formation then of TERIC.
I worked for a number of years, about 15 years at Shell Canada. Really enjoyed that. What a great company to gain experience. I discovered myself with some free time personally. My wife, shortly after we started dating, decided to return to university and upgrade her education. So I had a lot of free time, and thought, you know what? I've always had an interest in entrepreneurial aspects. I've always had a interest in building things. What a neat idea just to build a company and see where it goes. So, evenings and weekends kind of thing. My co-founder, Craig Barnes, and myself started working on TERIC. And in the beginning, it was a hobby, and then you become emotionally invested and you begin to ever so slowly build a brand. We started out doing what we called gas to power projects. So taking natural gas that couldn't be sold into the market, either because it was too far from a pipeline or the volumes were too small. We were taking that and putting it into the electrical grid, building small generators. And we built a number of them in Alberta and Saskatchewan. And I think at the peak there, we had about 12 of them, smaller units, but that was good for us. I think we both knew very well how to build projects, but our electrical knowledge on the commercial side, how do you actually interact with the grid? How do you get paid? How do you optimize this? How do you make revenue? That was something we were really lacking. And building those generators allowed us to really gain that experience and learn more about the market. So somewhere in around 2017, I think we saw a strong market change coming, and that was coal was beginning to phase out and renewables were really beginning to ramp up. And that creates the opportunity you highlighted earlier about renewables are absolutely intermittent, and everybody knows that. That's probably only one challenge they bring to the grid, and we can dive into that in a little bit. But yeah, that building that brand part-time, dedicating yourself to that while working a salary, we really bootstrapped every project we made, and I think that continues to form the culture we still have today.
Yeah. Okay. And Craig, so your co-founder, is he an engineer as well?
No, Craig would be more on the financial side of things. So he today primarily helps run the business side of things. So
Okay.
helps on the accounting, helps on the financial side. So it is a good pairing, we find.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when you were thinking up TERIC, like you said, is kind of a side thing to begin with, evenings, weekends, which a lot of companies start out that way, right? As kind of hobby projects that turn into something, that we can make money by doing this. But what got you sitting there thinking, yeah, this is what I should do with this hobby project? Like there's got to be something that drove you to say, hey, I want to do this.
Yeah, we brainstormed a lot of ideas, and I think we wanted something that wasn't oil and gas for a number of reasons, but also tangentially connected. So, my
Sorry, did you
now,
say tangentially connected?
yeah,
Can you please explain that one to me?
well, just you build up a lot of knowledge and contacts in
I
the
see.
oil and
Yeah.
gas industry. So, not appropriate for us to go away and start a travel business, we felt. We're just like,
Yeah.
making up an example, just like, hey,
Yeah.
we don't know anything about that. We don't want to be drilling. We don't want to be a oil and gas producer, but we do want to be able to interact with these people. So
Yes. Okay. Makes sense. I learned a new word today.
it may have been a made up one. To your question of like why electricity, my wife and I years ago took a trip to Alaska, and we stayed at an Airbnb, although I don't think it was called an Airbnb at the time. But we stayed in this town called Haines, Alaska, and the Airbnb owner, you get talking to people, and she heard I was an engineer, and she said, "Oh, one of my friends in town has just turned on a run of river generating project that powers a part of the town." So he gave us a tour, very kind, small project, but he had gone down the regulatory path, and he had built the project, and he had signed the contract with the town of Haines, Alaska, and was very proud of this. Naturally, 20-year contract to sell power, and I think that was a bit of the aha moment. We can do that. Little did we know that the days of run-of-river hydro were essentially behind us in Alberta. So that was short-lived, but it certainly planted the seed to be an active participant in the Alberta electrical market.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Now the grid itself, and 100 times more than I do about this, but I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the power that we're consuming right now, we're sitting in front of computer screens. We've got microphones, and all of that is using electricity. And the power that's powering that right now is being produced right now. Like power is produced and effectively used up right away. So that causes a lot of challenges with a grid where you have to, essentially overproduce. And that's, like I said earlier, and what we talked about earlier was that's one of the issues with those renewable energies is it's not easy to store electricity. So what are you guys doing that's maybe different, or what is the path towards coming or fighting through those challenges of the grid?
Yeah, great question. So you're absolutely spot on. In your comment regarding the power is generated and the power is consumed essentially at the exact same time. And we would call that the supply matching the demand. And if you think of your, scales of justice kind of thing, supply always has to meet demand.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is actually a very big and challenging part of operating the grid. So the grid is operated by an entity called the AESO, the Alberta Electrical System Operator. And primarily their job is to make sure that everyone is getting power as it is needed, and those supplying it have somewhere to put that power. And a decade ago, we had a small number of really large generators, and the AESO had a little bit of an easier job because those large generators were big, they were robust, they ran for really long periods of time, they were easily predictable. Enter today, where we have a very high number of smaller generators across a very different mix of assets. So wind, solar, indeed hydro, gas, that has created the problem of balancing that supply and demand to be quite a bit more difficult. And that part probably doesn't interest Alberta consumers who pay their electrical bills, but the price of that power certainly does.
Yeah.
So renewables have really changed how the grid is operated, and that has allowed companies like TERIC to have a product that is needed and be able to participate with economically viable storage projects.
Interesting. Do you guys have a vision of utilizing, say, batteries or something like that to be able to store that power and then return it back to the grid? Or what is really the future of TERIC?
Great question. I think you're probably pretty close to being spot on with the vision of TERIC. Renewables create, I think, two real problems for the grid, and I'll try and summarize these quickly. One, of course, is that intermittency. So the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. When it does,
well, Kevin, I'm from Lethbridge. The wind always blows.
you and Pincher Creek. Generalizing across Alberta, when it does blow and when it does shine, there's so much electricity in the grid that the prices go to zero, if not zero.
Yeah.
And we generate too much power. So when that's occurring, power is today, very inexpensive. Everyone loves it. But when that comes off, you need to have another source to backstop it. And in Alberta today, that's primarily gas. So many people might have heard of peaker plants. They would turn on when the power is not being able to provide it elsewhere, and when the price signals get high enough that they can make money. So you see real volatility in pricing from essentially nothing to very, very high. Batteries can help there. The other problem that renewables bring is what's known as inertia. So when we had large coal generators, large gas generators, if load was coming in and out of the grid, remembering that supply and demand always have to match each other. If a large load came on or a large load turned off, no big deal. Those generators had what was called inertia, and they'd be able to ride through that no problem. And I'll try and keep this interesting for your listeners, but wind and solar don't help provide inertia. So where that manifests itself is in the frequency. So if you've ever gone on vacation to another country, you know that not everybody operates on 60 hertz, and sometimes you need to consider that if you want to use your electronics. We operate on 60 hertz, so we always have to stay at that. Renewables really upset that. So batteries help provide that reliability aspect to the grid. So the AESO will procure assets to sit on standby until the frequency gets upset, and then they will ask to respond. So batteries would charge or batteries would discharge to help bring the frequency back to 60 hertz. That is really the two areas in that batteries help in shifting prices to be more levelized between volatility and in the frequency side of things. So back to your question, our vision is that as renewables continue into a grid, you need something like storage to make sure the grid remains affordable and reliable.
Very interesting. I actually didn't know that about the frequency. I mean, I knew that we were at 60 hertz, but I didn't know that those renewables would upset that. So that makes a lot of sense why that battery storage would be needed for that. Um, One thing I have heard though is it's very difficult to store electricity in the batteries because there's you need so many batteries to store the type of electricity that we're talking about. What what is being done about that, or is there anything being done about it right now?
The 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 early entry of batteries into the grid has been small duration. So all of TERIC's installations to date have been in or around the 2 hour time frame. So we can store a large amount of power for 2 hours. That seems to be today the most economical projects,
Mhm.
driven by the fact that lithium, for a number of reasons, is a really great way to store power. There's a ton of work in companies all across the globe looking at storing power for longer, different ways. Everything from major corporations to garage scientists have an idea of how we can store power in different ways. I think in the years coming, you'll see power being able to be stored for longer and longer. So, TERIC's projects today can help with grid reliability. Tomorrow, we would like to get better at storing power intraday. So when the wind is blowing, the sun is shining, taking all that low cost electricity in and releasing it through the night.
Yeah.
Fast forward maybe another decade, maybe you eventually see seasonal storage where we can take it in the summer and be able to release it in February when the sun doesn't shine. That is a number of years away, but
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the R&D is going today.
Interesting. I've seen some pretty interesting ideas proposed on the storage, and these are probably like the people sitting in their garage and then they make the YouTube video on it. But some of the stuff is it makes a lot of sense when they're saying, well, we don't need a battery necessarily to store that. All this energy is energy. So can we convert that into something else, whether it's heating water and then pulling the heat out of the water later to take that energy? Or I've seen it again, I don't think that these are practical or anything like that, but where they, pump water up during the day or when there is lots of power, and then when there's not power, the sun's not shining anymore, that water goes down and runs through a generator again, and that cycle kind of keeps going. So it's interesting that there is other potential opportunities that we might see that are outside of batteries, and maybe it is some crazy person in their garage that'll come up with it one day. But are there any other technologies that are like actually viable to look at, or is really batteries the way to go right now?
To your point, there is a lot of ideas. The best ones follow the rules of physics, in my opinion. Viability would probably be dependent on how you measure it. So technically, yes, a lot of these ideas will work, but you also have to have the commercial structure within your jurisdiction and the economic signals to make it work. So just picking on Alberta, we operate in what's a merchant market, meaning that you look at the price of power and you decide if you want to participate or not. So you have to weigh that market, the risks and things. A lot of these will get flushed out when you start really looking at the economics, but some of them will absolutely work. There's a lot of companies that are high cost of capital now, high cost of operating, but as we get economies of scale and as they refine their technology, they will push their costs down, and it's up to people like TERIC to evaluate them and find those technologies that work and find which markets you can plug that into.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, for TERIC specifically, maybe I'll ask is what do you see in the next 5 to 10 years? And maybe I'll ask that as bigger. What do you see in the market, and then what do you see for you guys?
Yeah, great question. our early projects in Alberta were standalone batteries.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. In the last couple of years, we've really moved into more niche projects with what we call hosts. So our hosts would be people that are renewables generators. So whether it's wind, solar, even hydro, we're working with a number of those to install batteries behind their assets. We're also working with large load customers, oil and gas companies, to an earlier point I made. Oil and gas companies, they have large loads, whether it's at a refinery or some other facility, and they're very conscious of their cost of electricity. It's usually right up there with salaries, right? So we've moved into those really niche type of projects, and I see that running for us for a number of years. There's lots of opportunity in Alberta if you know where to look and know how to execute the projects. Those projects are a little bit more complex and challenging than standalone projects, but I think we've got the team that's really good at that. So, in the next 5 years, I think that'll be a big part of our focus is executing well and operating well with our host projects. And batteries typically follow renewables. So we're starting to look outside of just Alberta. We've been working in a number of provinces now for about two or 3 years.
Yep.
Other provinces, similar to Alberta, are beginning to increase the amount of renewables they have. And we know that that's a clear signal that they need batteries as well, because they have the same intermittency and same frequency challenges. So
right.
For us as a corporation, yeah, it's continuing to do well with what we've earned and also getting a foothold into other provinces. That's our runway, we believe.
This has been really fascinating actually for me. I'm kind of a closet nerd about some of this kind of stuff. So I understand it maybe more than the average person, but certainly not how you what your knowledge would be. So that's super cool being able to sit and listen. If somebody wanted to learn more about what you guys were doing or maybe wanted to connect with you, where would they go for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Would welcome folks to reach out. So TERICpower.com is our website address, and can learn a bit more about us and also reach us through that website. I'm also active on LinkedIn. So yeah, Kevin Gilbank, and I'd welcome a reach out.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, absolutely fascinating having you on the show today. Want to thank you for your time for that, and wish you guys all the best of luck.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this experience.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.